So this chapter will cover about main focus will be on post-modern period, or we can say that the post-modern India, which is from the 200 BC to 300 CE, under which we will be looking after on the development of agriculture in ancient India, the use of iron tools, how irrigation was practiced, the development of villages and towns, the Bragaja, the Sangam age, and also we will talk about the important center on in the Sangam age, that is Akari Medu. It is a small town in Tamil Nadu nowadays. Then they are mentioned in different sources like stories, travelers, sculptures, and archaeology. Then the development of metal craft, that is coins. So the post-modern empire, then it is divided into two phases. The first phase is from 200 BC to 300 CE, and the second phase is 300 CE onwards. So in the first phase, what happened that in northwest there are so many new dynasties were in the power, like Indo-Greek Sakas for 100 years, Kusnas and Guptas. So these basically four dynasties were there who ruled over the northwest area of India after the Mauryan Empire. Then the second one was Central India. In Central India, there were two dynasties. One is Sunga dynasty, and the second one is the Kanva dynasty. Then the third one is the Deccan area. In Deccan, there were two dynasties: the Satyavahana dynasty and the Vakataks dynasty. And then in the south also, the Chola dynasty, the famous Chola dynasty, the Chera, the Pandya, Palwa, and Chanakya. So these are some dynasties who ruled over India after in the post Mauryan Empire, the first phase of post Mauryan Empire. Then the second phase is after 300 CE onwards. Then the first phase. So we will be talking about the first phase. The first phase is between 200 BCE to 300 CE. So basically in the first phase what happens, there were so many socio-cultural changes. Socio-cultural changes means that how the society is organized during the Mauryan period. It is completely different from the Mauryan period in the post-Mauryan Empire, that there were the organization of different socio-culture phases and changes, the spread of agriculture, the exploring land routes and sea routes. So when the foreigners came to India, they explored lots of sea routes and the land routes for coming to India. Then the building of temples and stupas, writing of books, scientific discoveries also. Then outer dynasties came to India from northern, where were Indo-Greeks who came from northern, the Sakas, the Prathinas and the Kushanas. So these were some dynasties which came to India after the powerful Mauryan Empire. We can say that in the first phase of the post Mauryan India, these were Indo-Greeks, the Sakas, the Prathinas and the Kushanas. So there were also three Tamil dynasties were also there. These are known as the Chola dynasty, the Chera dynasty, the Chola, the Chera and the Pandya dynasty. And also we will be talking about the Sangam age, the development of literature. It is about three dynasties of Tamil region, that were Chola, Chera and the Pandya. So it will be talking about the Sangam age, will be talking about these three dynasties. So the next one is that the iron tool and the agriculture. So what was the development in the field of iron tools, the agriculture during the post-modern India? So the use of iron can be traced back to 3000 years, with growing use of reflecting some 25 years ago from nowadays. Then these iron tools used included axes for clearing forest and the iron plug shears, most useful for increasing agriculture production. So basically the iron tools were used to increase the agricultural production at that time. So the other steps to increase production of was the irrigation. The most important factor was the water. So water, in which the kings and the kingdoms needed the support of flourishing villages to exist, means that also the kings and the kingdoms, for their development they need a support from the villagers, because the people of the villages pay tax to the kings with the help of that collected tax, they develop their army, they build their army and the kingdoms, the buildings. So kings and kingdoms needed the support of clustering villages to exist. Then the new tools and the system of transplantation increased production. So irrigation was also used, means that the new tools and the new tools made of iron were used to increase the production. The system of transplantation was followed to increase the production. Then irrigation works built during this time, including canals, wells, tanks and artificial lake. So these were basically built by the king, because definitely when the production will be high, then the kings will be also collecting the high taxes and they will be collecting the high revenue from the people of the villages, so that they can use that to build a vast empire and the army. So basically the kings of that time support the villagers for doing the agriculture and increasing their production. So they built wells, canals, tanks and artificial lakes, so that these modes can be used by the farmers to increase their production through irrigation. Then farmers have to increase the production to pay taxes. So definitely the king, what the king do is support the irrigation system, and then they collect high taxes from the farmers. Okay, so it is clear to everyone. Then the next one is who lived in the villages. So who lived in these villages? So it was a very important question, that who lived in these villages. So there are different kinds of people who live in these villages. The first one is that three different kinds of people lived in villages in the northern and southern part of the subcontinent. So in the southern part, if we talk about in the southern part, then these were the three types of people who live in the southern part. The large landowners, which were known as Vellore. And then the second one is whereas ordinary plugmen were known as Ujwar. And the third one is the landless laborers, including slaves, were known as Kadisiar, or we can say that Adimai. So these were the three types of people who lived in the villages of the southern part, or we can say that Tamil part. Then in the northern part of the country had village headman, or we can say that Gram Bhojka. So in the northern part of the country, the villages had the village headman, or we can say that Gram Bhojka. He was the largest landowner and had slaves, and he hired workers to cultivate the land and was very powerful. So in the northern part of the country, the villages have the Gram Bhojka, or we can say that the headman of the village. He was the largest landowner. He is having lots quantity of land, and had also some slaves. He hired workers to cultivate the land and was very powerful. The king often used him to collect taxes from the villages. And also sometimes what happened, that these Gram Bhojka were appointed by the king to means to collect the taxes from the villages, and they give that collected revenue to the king. एंड ऑल्सो द पोस्ट ऑफ जो पोस्ट होती थी ग्राम भोजका की, बेसिकली वो क्या होती थी, हेरिडिटरी होती थी. हेरिडिटरी मीन्स द फैमिली फ्रॉम विच द ग्राम भोजका इज बिलोंग. So their son will be ruling as a Gram Bhojka. Then he functioned as a judge or a policeman also. In the villages, he also functioned as a judge and the policeman also. Then apart from the Gram Bhojka, other independent farmers were also there. Those were known as Grihipatis, were very small landowners. So after what happened after Gram Bhojka, there were some other independent farmers who were known as Grihipatis, means that they are having a very small land for their farming and agriculture. So they were known as Grihapatis. Then the men and women such as the Dasa Karmakara did not own any land. So the persons who do not have any land or do not own any land were known as Dasa. They but had to earn a living working on the field of honors owned by others. So these Dasa work in the field of Grihapatis also, and in the field of Gram Bhojka also. So they learn in the they do work in the both. Then in most villages there were some craft persons such as blacksmith, potter, carpenter and weaver also. So these were all known as dasa. Then finding out about cities, stories, travelers, sculptures and archaeology, that how we find about these. So Jakatas were stories. Basically, the stories were known as Jakatas. So Jakatas were the story that were composed by ordinary people and written down and preserved by Buddhist monks. So Jakatas basically were the stories who tell about the cities, who tells about the people, who tells about the society, who tells about the villages, and they were composed by the ordinary people and written down and preserved by the Buddhist monks. Then other kinds of evidence to find out about life of some of these early cities: sculptures carved scenes depicting people's lives. So there were some sculptures also which depict the scenes of the how the people lives in the towns, how the people lives in the villages, how the people live in the first. So basically sculptures were the form of art which were depicting on the walls, which were depicted on the stones, that how the people lives in the towns, how they carry out their livelihood, how what profession they follow, what work they do. All these things were depicted in the form of art and were used to decorate railings, pillars and gateways of the building that were visited by the people. Then cities developed from about 25 years ago as capitals are known as capitals of महाजनपद. Means that जो महाजनपद होते थे उनकी capitals को बोला जाता था cities या town. Then some of these cities were surrounded by massive fortification walls. So basically to protect those large cities there were also be built a massive fortification walls around the town or the city, and archaeologists have found rows of pots and ceramic rings arranged one on top of the other known as ring wells. Ring wells also were found on the ceramic rings which were arranged one of the कुछ ऐसा उसका शेप होता था, जैसे ये एक रिंग हो गई, इसके ऊपर एक फिर दूसरी रिंग, इसके ऊपर एक तीसरी रिंग, तो ये पूरा एक जो होता था ये एक वेल बन जाता था. So these were known as the ring wells. So these were used as toilets in some cases also and as drains and garbage dumps. So जो ये होते थे इनको टॉयलेट के रूप में भी यूज किया जा सकता था, इनको ड्रेन्स के रूप में भी यूज किया जाता था, इनको गार्बेज डंप्स के भी उसमें यूज किया जाता था. देन दीज आर यूजली फाउंड इन इंडिविजुअल हाउसेस. इंडिविजुअल हाउसेस में भी ये फाउंड होते थे. ऐसी टाइप की रिंग होती थी जिनको एज अ टॉयलेट यूज किया जाता था, एज अ डंप यूज किया जाता था एंड ऑल्सो एज अ गार्बेज यूज किया जाता था. Then these are usually found in individual houses. There were hardly any remains of palaces, मार्केट्स और ऑफ होम्स ऑफ ऑर्डनली पीपल. तो ऑर्डनली पीपल के बेसिकली होम्स इतने अच्छे नहीं होते थे कि वो इतने दिन तक सर्वाइव कर सके, तो बहुत ही कम देखने को मिलता है कहीं भी. देन द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट इज़ द संगम लिटरेचर. इट इज़ मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट. we can say that it is the most important the Sangam literature. So Sangam literature basically it is a, we can say that a Sangam is a type of meeting or the assembly of poets. So basically assembly of poets is known as Sangam, and when the writings were done about these meetings, that was known as Sangam literature. So meeting held 3 times of Sangam. That first meeting was by Rishi Agastya held in Madurai, known as the Assembly of Poets, that is Sangam. Then Sangam literature is about village information, types of people live and kingdom. So basically what the Sangam literature tells about, it is a source which tells about the life of villages, the livelihood of villages, the types of people who live in the villages and the kingdom at that time. The next one is the cities with many functions. So basically what the cities were doing about, and that the cities with many functions, that one of the most important city was at that time which have the mention in the sculptures, in the inscriptions, was the Mathura. So Mathura is an important settlement for more than 2500 years, which is important, located at the crossroads of two major routes of travel and trade. Means that it is located at the cross rates of like this. it was located like this on the crossroads of two major routes. This place is known as Mathura. We can say that then crossroads of two major routes of travel and trade from the northwest to the east and from north to south, fortification around the city and several shrines. So basically it was having the fortification, and it is on crossroads of two major routes. One is from the northwest to the east and the second one is from the north to the south, fortification. Then the farmers and herders from adjoining areas provided food for people of the cities. So basically what the farmers and herders from adjoining area, so the villages which are around this Mathura city, the people from that villages provide food to the people of city through their agriculture. Mathura, a center where some extremely fine sculpture were produced around 2000 year ago, became second capital of Kusnas. So it was the Mathura was the second capital of Kusnas. Mathura was also a religious center, and there were Buddhist monasteries, Jain shrines, an important center for the worship of Krishna. So basically, if we talk about the Mathura, then Mathura was basically a religious center, which was also important for Buddhism, which was also important for Jainism, and which was also an important center for the worship of Krishna, or we can say that it was known as the birth place of Krishna. Then the inscriptions on surfaces such as stone slabs and statues found in Mathura are short inscriptions recording gifts by men or sometimes women to monasteries and shrines made by kings and queens, officers, merchants, craft persons who lived in the city. So basically, the inscriptions which were found in the form of stone slabs and statues in Mathura, these have the mention of the recordings of the gifts which were given by the king, by the people, to the monasteries which were developed, or which are shrines which are made by kings and queens. So basically these were this Mathura was a very important place in terms of trade also, because of its position, and in terms of the religious center also, because of its holy place for the Buddhists also, for the Jains also, and for the birthplace of the Krishna also. Then the next one is the coins, the development of coins in the post-Mauryan Empire. So these were the some of the coins which were developed during the post-Mauryan India. The wealth measured in terms of coin, and archaeologists found several thousands of coins belonging to this period. The earliest coins were used for about 500 years ago, which punch marked coins means that these type of punching was there, punch mark coins, which were that are generally rectangular or sometimes square or round in shape. So these can be rectangular also, these can be circle also, these can be square also. Then these are cut out of metal sheet or made out of flattened metal globules, a small spherical body, and not inscribed but were stamped with symbols using dies and punches. So basically these were having punches like this. These were having punches in middle of the finger. Then these coins found over most parts of the continent were in circulation till the early century CE. So these coins were found in all over there and were used for the trade by the traders. Then the crafts and the craftsperson. So what were the crafts and the craftsperson during that time? So archaeological evidence from crafts extremely fine poetry known as northern black polished ware, NBPW, generally found in the northern part of the subcontinent. So basically the archaeological evidence found that type of fine poetry which is known as the northern black polished ware, NBPW, generally found in the northern part of the subcontinent, known from text manufacture of cloth, was important famous center such as known for text manufacture of cloth, was important famous centers such as Varanasi in north, Madurai in south. Men and women worked in these centers. So basically the two most famous centers in the subcontinent, Varanasi in the north and Madurai in the south. Then the craftsperson and merchants now formed association known as Serene. So basically, the craft persons and the merchants form an association which were known as Srinis. Srinis of craft person provide training, procured raw material and distributed a finished product. So basically, they looked after the functioning of the traders, the functioning of the craftsmen, and also the provide raw material to the persons. Then the Srinis or merchants organized the trade, also served as banks, where rich men and women deposit money, invested, and part of the interest was retained and used to support religious institutions such as monasteries. So basically, the Sreen was an organization which also work as a bank, where the rich people, the rich traders deposit their money, and the interest which they get, they donate it or used it for the religious purposes and donate it to the monasteries for their development. So these were the functions of the crafts and the craftsperson, the Syrians and their associations. Thank you.